Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Along with Vincent Turner, our founder, the producer today is Logan Landers, and I'm Harper LaBelle. Thank you for tuning in. Today, Vincent, we've got ourselves a very good show. I think we're going to have two of the better ones. Billy Cannon, we're going to talk about him in just a second. And later today, we're going to talk to the birthday boy, Barry Sanders. He celebrates his birthday today. But two guys that are legends in their own right. We'll start with Billy Cannon. I learned so much about this young guy when he was playing, where he grew up, some of the things that he got in trouble. He got out of trouble. There were some interesting things about him, but thank you for bringing up Billy Cannon as the highlight today in our Legend Show.
Billy Cannon Sr., LSU. Now, there's been some great athletes that came to the University of Louisiana State. You can go back to Shaquille O'Neal, Pistol Pete Maravich. But when you look at LSU, Joe Burrow here recently, I'm using the top three, and then Tommy Casanova. But man, to me, the first knowledge I ever got at LSU was Billy Cannon in 1959, that we're going to get into the show a little bit more about Halloween night and the Chinese Bandits on that 1958 national championship team. And one other thought about Billy Cannon. You know, I looked up the definition bandit. And the definition of a bandit is a robber, an outlaw. Billy Cannon at LSU was an outlaw and a robber. That's why he won the Heisman Trophy in 1959. Back to you, Hart.
Well, another one of the things, he was pretty darn good, and he was around a lot of other good players as well. We don't ever want to take away from somebody's teamwork and all the things that they do, but whether you call it luck or whether you call it this guy is just blessed beyond measure, he was a winner wherever he went. Billy Abe Cannon, born on August 2nd, 1937, so in the latter part of the Depression in Philadelphia, Mississippi. His parents, Harvey and Virgie Cannon, ended up moving to the Baton Rouge area during World War II. There was a job there for Harvey, and he needed to get to work. He had a young family and wanted to make some money. So during the war effort, they moved to Baton Rouge, and that would become their home for quite a while. He was 6'1". He was about 200 pounds by the time he went into high school at, I want to say it correctly. Is it Istroma? East Troma, please forgive me. I'm French Canadian, but Cajun Canadian, the Cajun French, that's a completely different language down there. They'll put vowels and consonants in that I sure don't know how to pronounce it correctly. But here's a look at what he was able to do in high school. When he gets there, he could run a 9.600, and I'm sure he ran a low 4-something, 4.3, 4.2 maybe, 40-yard dash. But he was a strong kid too. He was a shot putter and a really good athlete. He loved basketball. He played that. But during his senior year, things changed for him quite a bit. During the summer, as a rising senior, Billy got himself in a little bit of trouble. He and his buddies would kind of hang out. And there weren't a ton of them. There were just a couple of guys. And they would see guys walking out of the bar, and they were stumbling and they were sputtering and whatever, and occasionally hit them up for a couple bucks. Well, it graduated into where he would follow a few of these guys, and they'd have a young lady on their arm, and they'd be making a trip to a local motel or a hotel. And Billy would wait for the man to leave, and when he was in the parking lot, Billy would walk up, and he was a pretty stout kid, full of muscles, strong, fast, and he would hit him up for a couple of bucks. The guy goes, "What are you talking about? I'm not giving you any money." "Well, if you don't give me any money, sir, I'm going to tell your wife where you've been." So it was extortion. It was a little bit of theft. And Billy was the first to say, "I was a thug."
Yes,
and he
sir.
was given a 90-day suspended sentence by a local judge. And had it been any worse, he wouldn't have been allowed to play football. But he did. He got to play. Listen to this, Vincent. His senior year, he scores 39 touchdowns, which was a state record at the time, 229 points he was accountable for. He only played in half the games because by the time the third quarter was beginning, they had already soundly defeated just about every team that they had played against. He was All-State, All-American, and they win the state championship as a senior. And now he starts getting recruited pretty heavily. There's a couple of schools like Tulsa, Iowa State. There was one other that was deeply interested in getting him, and he has LSU also. And because he'd gotten a little bit of trouble, his mother wanted to make sure that he stayed close to home, and he respected her wisdom, and he ended up becoming a LSU Tiger. And during that process, one of the things that was a kicker in terms of making that decision is the head coach was able to get him a job during the summer at a local car dealership so he could make a couple of bucks. Now, Vincent, I don't know what the NIL money was back in those days, and he didn't certainly go into the portal. But what I do want to make mention of is that the teams that were interested in him, that was one of the things that was the difference, is that he had an opportunity to make a couple of bucks during the off season. And that was still allowed back in those days. But he couldn't play as a freshman. But let's talk a little bit about what an amazing career he had there with the LSU Tigers.
When you talk about game changer, or a guy that comes on your campus and he just brings the excitement, he lifts everybody up to another level. And think about the time Billy Cannon was there. He was right before Bear Bryant took the Alabama job in 1959. But when you look at it, LSU hadn't had a lot of success, and they had a coach by the name of Paul Diesel who came over from Army. And when Billy Cannon stepped on the campus, it was just like Shaquille O'Neal when he stepped on at LSU, or Joe Burrow, or either Tommy Casanova or Burt Jones. This guy was excitement. And what really amazes me about him is that he was 6'1", about 225, fast, versatile. And he played looked like every position at LSU. He played quarterback, halfback, could have went into the National Football League as a safety. It was everything special about him. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself because I know you want to lead us into that 1959 Halloween game. And that's when he became a legend, not only in the state of Louisiana, a legend across the nation. The guy just had everything special about him as a football player: speed, power, versatility, hands, balance, blocking. He was what you call everybody's hero. Remember that movie, John Goodman and Randy Quaid? No, Dennis Quaid, who played his part. That movie was everything about Billy Cannon. Super, super football player, man. One of the best that's ever came through the Southeastern Conference. Back to you, Hall.
Yeah, versatile athlete. He was a punter, too. He averaged almost 40 yards, which was unheard of back in those days. So he did everything. He did it. Power where you needed to have power, and finesse where you needed to have that. Let's take a look real quick. His freshman year, he's playing with Jim Taylor. Heard of him, folks? Jim Taylor is the legend with the Green Bay Packers. But he went to LSU as well, and he was basically a backup, Billy Cannon was, to Jim Taylor, who had a fantastic year. His senior year ends up being in 1957. Paul Dietzel, as you mentioned, was the head coach there. So Billy doesn't get a whole lot of playing time. He gets in every now and then. He had 140 yards rushing on 8 attempts against the University of Alabama. They end up winning that game 28-0. They had lost to Rice in week 1. They win the week 2 game against Alabama. Then they beat Texas Tech 19-14. They beat Georgia Tech, Kentucky. They lose to Florida, and they end up 5-5 for the year. Billy had 583 yards total that freshman year, but he led the nation in kickoff return, 31.2 yards per kick. That was pretty good back in those days. He was the nation leader there. In 1958, this is when things started taking off, and this is where LSU became something that everybody wanted to know a little bit more about. 11-0, undefeated, national champs. They beat Florida in the homecoming game 10-7, and that's when the wheels everything was going right. The fans, the coaches, the national press started going, this team is pretty good. We better watch them. He had 115 carries that year, 686 yards. He was all SEC. He was the MVP of the SEC that year, All-American. He was a player of the year. I think that really set the stage, Vincent, for his senior year, which is in 1959. And around the time that they play Ole Miss, they're 6-0. They're undefeated, of course. Ole Miss is undefeated. And are they going to repeat as national champs? Everybody was kind of whispering that on a national level and especially on a local level in that team. And let's talk a little bit about that Halloween game. Why don't you give some of the details? Because this is one of those games that legends were made of, and everything worked out in Billy Cannon's favor. But give us a little bit of a background.
LSU came in #1 at that time, Ole Miss #3. Remember, we did a video a couple of weeks ago about a real nice running back out of Ole Miss by the name of Charlie Flowers. He was on that team along with Jake Gibbs, Billy Brewer, Bobby Franklin. Very good Ole Miss team. And I always said, when I started studying college football, and I was able as a little boy to really read about certain games and certain moments in college football, this game right here came to my memory first and what I read. And what I read, think about it, was Halloween night, both teams 6-0. And back then, you playing the night game in the South, down in Baton Rouge where it gets really hot. Harper, you've been down there with Georgia State. You know how hot it is.
People need to cool off with a beverage, don't they, Vincent?
They're drinking that, whatever I want to say, that vodka or bourbon. You can smell it in the stands. Can you imagine being there that night? And in the definition of Halloween, allowing spirits to roam the earth. It couldn't get no better. And then him, Mr. Cannon, go back, if you're watching us today, please go back and watch that 89-yard punt return. What's so fascinating about that play, he broke 7 tackles. He broke 7 tackles. And when he got in the clear, it was special. It was electric. LSU. Back to you, Hawk.
They were trailing 3-0, and a punt in the fourth quarter that hits the ground, and Billy Cannon retrieves it at about the 11-yard line, maybe the 12. They gave him credit for it. Maybe it was where his feet were. And he stays in between the hash mark and the visiting sideline for the entirety of that specific play. And as you mentioned, breaking tackles left and right, but staying on that sideline and just keeping his feet moving. Next thing you know, at about the 50-yard line, he breaks clear of the last defender. I believe it was the punter that had a chance to hit him right about there. And then it's smooth sailing. Can you imagine the volume at that point where the crowd rises to their feet? They take the lead 7-3, and then they have a goal line stand late in the game. Mississippi is driving. They have a 4th and goal on the 1-yard line. And Billy Cannon.
Guess who makes the tackle?
Billy Cannon makes that tackle, doesn't he? And along with I wrote it down here. It was that important. Warren Rabb. That's right. Yeah, they make a goal line stand. They win the game, and everything appears to be just roses, doesn't it? It's a great moment in LSU history. They are clear sailing, wouldn't you say, Vincent, to a second repeat national championship. But, oh, by the way, they had to play the following week against Tennessee. They lose that game. Billy Cannon, as a running back, gets stopped on a 2-point conversion that would have put LSU ahead. They lose that game, and then they are eligible for the Sugar Bowl. They play Ole Miss again in that game, and talk a little bit about, I just think the wind didn't appear in the sails in the same way. They end up losing that game 21-0.
Well, it's always hard to play a second team that's evenly matched with you and beat them again. And you think about that Ole Miss team was very talented. Remember, they were ranked #3 in the country, and a lot of people saying they was a national championship type squad. Jake Gibbs, Bobby Franklin, former coach Billy Brewer. Come on, man, Charlie Flowers. That was a very talented Ole Miss team coached by a very good coach, Johnny Vaught. And really, if you go back to the Halloween game where LSU won 7-3, LSU offense didn't really do anything that night. It just took a real special play by Mr. Cannon on his 89-yard punt return. So playing Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, again, that was what I call a real top of the order. And you saw who came out on top. Ole Miss wasn't going to be denied and ended up winning that football game 21-0. I don't think it was so much LSU, the rails were off, I think they just didn't have enough more juice to play a game at that high level against that type of competition that they already had played during the season. Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, there was a different drive, I think, for Ole Miss in that game. Hey, we lost in their place by 4 points. Let's take it to them. So they end up losing the Sugar Bowl, but Billy was not to be denied the Heisman Trophy. He wins 519 of the 1,197 first place votes. The next closest guy, Richie Lucas from Penn State, had under 100. He had 98 votes. So it was clear cut that he was the best player in the country. He wins the Heisman Trophy. The award is presented to him by Vice President Richard Nixon, which had never happened before, where one of the ranking officials in the country is the one. But Nixon was kind of a sports fan. He loved baseball, and he certainly wanted to honor Billy Cannon. So he accepts the award. But there's a little bit of controversy, Vincent, because prior to that, Billy Cannon had signed a contract with the Los Angeles Rams. Evidently, they had the first pick in the draft. And so he signs with them, a young general manager by the name of Pete Rozelle. Ever heard of him, guys? Pete Rozelle signs Billy Cannon to a contract before the season is over. And at the end of the Sugar Bowl, I believe it was on the field, he and Bud Adams, the owner of the Houston Oilers, the brand new league, the American Football League, it ends up with them getting the first round pick in the 1960 draft. And Bud Adams shakes hands with Billy Cannon, and before he's in the locker room, he signs a contract with the Houston Oilers. Well, the Rams find out about this, and they don't like it at all. They sue Billy Cannon. Billy had signed with two different clubs within just a few weeks of one another. The judge in the case rules in favor of Cannon going to Houston. He says naivety had part of it. Young kid didn't know what he was doing, and the Rams were found to lose the rights to Billy Cannon. The advantage was he goes to a new league. He gets a little bit of a pay raise from $30,000 a year to $33,000. He became the first player in professional sports to make $100,000 in a contract. It was a 3-year term. He got a $10,000 signing bonus, and he asked Mr. Adams if he could include one other thing. Could you please buy a Cadillac for my dad? So how cool was that? But Mr. Adams ends up doing it, and there's a picture of the Rams right there, the 1960 Rams. They had a good team. They weren't great, but they were good. But he joins the Houston Oilers, and Vincent, my gosh, you win a national championship, you play in a Sugar Bowl, you win the Heisman Trophy, then you become a professional athlete. And the first year with the Houston Oilers, he's teamed up with guys like George Blanda. He had Charlie Hennigan, Bill Groman, who I had a chance to meet. I didn't know how good Bill Groman was, but he goes to Houston. They go 10-4 that first year. Billy Cannon has 644 yards on the ground, only one touchdown, but he had 15 receptions and 5 additional touchdowns as Houston. They play the LA Chargers in the championship game. And how did they do? Do you remember how that turned out for them?
I think they ended up winning the AFL championship that year, right?
They certainly did. So they beat the Chargers that first year. They're AFL champions. The final of that game was 24-16, and he was the MVP of that game. So could it get any better for Billy Cannon? It certainly can. The following year, they end up they go to the championship game again, and they win it. The third year he's in the league with the Houston Oilers. They win it again. Well, they go and they play the Dallas Texans in the championship, and they win that one. He has a little bit of an injury the following year, and he ends up asking Bud Adams if he could be let go and traded. So then he goes to the Raiders, becomes an Oakland Raider right at the beginning of their great runs that they had. Hooks up with Al Davis. Al says, you know what? I'm thinking maybe not a running back so much. I'm going to move you to tight end. He was reluctant to do that. He played fullback for a year, and then he played tight end for a year. But then in the third year he's with the Raiders, he has – I got to put this down for you. I want to mark down exactly what he did from a offense perspective, because he had a really good season, and this is the year that they end up going to the Super Bowl. The Raiders end up playing Jim Taylor in the Green Bay Packers. So good things happen wherever he went. His final year was in Kansas City, and they had just won the Super Bowl. They signed Billy Cannon during the offseason, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. He was getting old. He was a little bit slower, and he played about 7 or 8 games for the Kansas City Chiefs, and then he retired after 11 years in the league. What an amazing career this guy had.
I'm going to tell you, when he went to Houston and they went to them first 2 championship games, he got a lot of resentment from some teammates that was on that squad that I was reading about. And the head coach didn't like him. But at the end of the day, you saw what happened when he got with that Raiders team and that 1967 team. I'm still trying to figure out, how did they lose to Green Bay in Super Bowl II? You had the mad bomber, Darryl LaMonica, throwing bombs. You had Hewitt Dixon out of Florida A&M running that rock. You had Clem Daniels out of Texas Southern running that rock. You had Warren Wells, another Texas Southern guy. Fred Biletnikoff, Ken Hurrock. Shout outs to you, Mr. Hurrock.
It's his birthday today. Ken Hurrock's birthday is July 16th. How about that? Happy birthday, Ken.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Birthday boys. Before I move on, my man right here, Mr. Hopper LaBelle, his birthday was on, Monday the 14th? And mine's tomorrow the 17th. Thank you. We got cancer in July in the house. But getting back to the Raiders team, they had the big, mean, nasty Ben Davis, Gene Upshaw. And I'm still trying to figure out, how did they lose to Green Bay in that Super Bowl? And then you had Billy Cannon, who was averaging, I think, almost like 18 yards of reception from the tight end position.
Yes, he was. Yep.
Getting downfield with speed. But when you look at it, you're right, Hart. He had a hell of a career. And everywhere he went, it was magic. As I said before we start the video today, my first words about him, the Chinese bandit, robber, outlaw. Back to you, Hart.
Yeah, he had some amazing American Football League records that he had. Real quick, in 1961, he led the AFL in rushing with 948 yards. That's when they repeated champs. They beat the Chargers again. He gained more yards in one game against the New York Titans. He had 5 touchdowns against them. He had 373 total all-purpose yards in that one single game. He joins the Raiders in 64. He had 14 receptions for 436 yards, 31.4 yard average in 1966. In 67, he talks Al Davis into signing George Blanda to be a kicker and a backup to the bomber, Darryl LaMonica. And by the way, Jim Otto was part of that team as well. He had 10 touchdowns that year. They beat the Oilers 40-7 in the AFL championship, and then the winner of that game got to go play in the Super Bowl. And they lose 33-14 to the Raiders in that game. And Billy had a wide open opportunity on a play. LaMonica hits him right in the hands. He drops it. He says that was the worst, most feeble effort that he ever had in his life. He really resented that he wasn't able to help the team, because that had given him a little bit closer advantage. But Green Bay was just too much for him on that day. He had 6 touchdowns in 1968, 2 in 1969, and that was Madden's first year as the head coach of the Raiders. And John kind of said, "Look, Billy, you're not going to make it here with the club. We're going to let you go." In 1970, the Kansas City Chiefs signed him 7-5-2. They missed the playoffs for the first time in their history. Did Kansas City. But then Billy had made an interesting little development, and we'll be real quick and we'll close here, guys. He studied and earned a degree in dentistry at the University of Tennessee during the off seasons when he was playing with the Oilers. And he ended up getting an orthodontia degree from Loyola University in Chicago, and he became a dentist. And the practice was going pretty well. What mom or dad wouldn't want Billy Cannon to put braces on your little one? In 1983, however, he had some gambling debts. There were some issues at the dentistry. And what Billy did is he printed out $6 million worth of counterfeit $100 bills. And I think maybe he used one of them to pay off a little bit of a gambling debt to the wrong guy. And he got in trouble for that. He served 2.5 years at the Texarkana Federal Prison. He was released in 1986. His practice really struggled in in non-penitentiary life. He wasn't able to make it. In 1995, he was hired as a part-time dentist at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. The warden there really liked him. His name was Burl King. And the inmates also did. They called him Legend. When they went to go see him, if they had a problem with an abscessed tooth or they needed a root canal or whatever it was, but he became the full-time director over the dentistry and then the entire medical system there in the Louisiana State Penitentiary. In 2013, he had a stroke over the weekend. On Monday morning, he was back at work. So he really loved what he was doing, and he found a real purpose in his life, helping the men that needed the correctional institutionalization. That really became important to him. And then he died on May 20th on 2018. Vincent, final words about Billy Cannon. What an amazing life that this man led, and accolades all over the place.
I think the one point that I like about Billy Cannon is that I got a lot of respect for him. He made a major mistake in his life. There's no question about it, but he stood up 100 to his mistake, served his time, and then he turned around and went back and helped the people that needed to be helped. And I saw an interview with him yesterday. It was an 8-minute video with a young lady out of Baton Rouge back in 2017. And one thing he mentioned, he said, when you get in trouble, you find out who your real friends are. He said he didn't have one. But he was able to regroup, everybody's hero. And look what he did. He served in the prison industry, for 20 years? And look what he did. He made a change within society. And I'm so happy that LSU honored him a few years back because, like I said before, to start this show, we could talk about Shaquille O'Neal being the greatest athlete that ever came through LSU. We could talk about Pistol Pete Maverick being the greatest athlete that ever came through LSU. We could talk about Joe Burrow in his outstanding season in 2019. We could talk about Dale Brown. We could talk about Nick Saban winning national championships at LSU and Les Miles. But I want everybody to understand this. When they mention LSU athletics, the one that goes to the top for me is Billy Cannon. 1959, Halloween night. The bandit, the outlaw, the robber. Man, I loved him as a football player and still got a lot of respect for him as a person, regardless of what has happened. He's gone to glory. He's one of the greatest athletes that played at college football and the best player in LSU football history. I don't want to hear about Joe Burrow here recently. This guy right here changed LSU football program. That's my final words about an outstanding athlete. Back to you, Hawk.
He died in St. Francisville, Louisiana. He lived to be 80 years old, and in his life, played 11 years in the National Football League. He was a 3-time AFL champion, a 2-time AFL MVP. He went to the AFL, all AFL first team twice in his career, second team twice in his career. Twice he was an all-star, which was what they did back then, 61 and 69. So two opposite ends of his career. He was considered to be one of the finest in the American Football League. He was a rushing leader in 1961, a national champion at Louisiana State University. And by the way, he did win the Heisman Trophy there. He was a 2-time Player of the Year for the UPI, the Sporting News Player of the Year 2 times as well, the Chick Harley Award winner 2 times, SEC Player of the Year 2 times, unanimous All-American 2 times, first team All-SEC a couple of times, second team All-SEC back in 1957. They retired as number 20 at Louisiana State University. He is in the College Football Hall of Fame. He is Billy Cannon. So we honor him today here on 100 Yards of Football and appreciate his contribution to football in general. We want to honor him for that. So for Vincent Turner, our producer. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Harper. I got to give him this respect. Warriors, come out to play. Back to you, Harper.
All right. Well, for Vincent Turner, our warrior, for Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, I just want to say thank you for tuning in, everybody. This has been our Legends Show. Today we feature Billy Cannon, the LSU great. I want to say thank you for tuning in. Have a fantastic rest of your day, everybody.